Hello, welcome to my presentation on adaptive management for Connecticut's Living Shorelines. This presentation is part of my class project at American Public University System in completion of my graduate degree for environmental policy and management. This assignment is to create an adaptive management plan for a local natural resource or environmental policy. So I've chosen to address Connecticut's Living Shoreline policies, and I will draft an adaptive management plan to address this. The first part, this presentation, will provide an overview. What I'll do is describe the Living Shoreline, express why CT, among other states, would pursue this sort of policy. I'll provide some background on Connecticut's coast to set the stage for the Living Shoreline policy and adaptive management concerns. Then I'll give you some background on the current state of policies. And lastly, to put it all together, I'll explain why Connecticut's Living Shoreline policy needs an adaptive management plan. Come on. Well, the Living Shoreline is a green or hybrid infrastructure to stabilize coastal erosion. It is a technique of coastal protection, makes use of native planting of wetland plants, primarily the smooth cordgrass, Spartina altiniflora, some slope grading, in certain instances toe stills or natural breakwaters to halt erosion, attenuate wave energy on coastlines, essentially to create a sort of fringing salt marsh habitat. Sometimes it's protecting existing habitat, and other times this is creating entirely new habitat. Wetland creation could be used for, other wetland mitigation banks, or, it's just a good thing. Typically, this is a new technique that is being put in contrast to using harder structures like breakwaters, riprap, bulkheads, generally just could be called seawalls or coastal structures that have been used historically to provide protection. The issue with these structures is the way that they deflect wave energy to the sides, downward. It can scour the adjacent property. It will undermine the structures. It'll lower the elevation of the sediment directly beneath the walls, and eventually this could undercut and go, completely destroy the structure. This, other than, potentially not providing adequate protection, also degrades the habitat of these areas and surrounding areas. Living shorelines actually provide better protection to coastal property. This has been proven from class 1, stage 1 hurricanes in North Carolina, and they've also been proven to enhance ecosystem services by 90%. With issues like sediment accretion, providing habitat for fisheries, nurseries, nutrient load reduction, provides some of these other services like recreation and carbon sequestration as well. And this is sort of just a diagram, provide a little bit of background of what a living shoreline is, what it isn't. This image is available throughout the internet, so I'm attributing it to NOAA, but I've seen it on other websites too. And the Connecticut coastline is very long. It's got a lot of ins and outs. It's a rocky coastline, unlike states really south of Connecticut, which are more sandy. It's the New England sort of glacial habitats. There are the salt marsh in Connecticut has been, degraded for, I guess, 400 years approximately, and currently there are 13,000 acres of coastal salt marsh habitat in Connecticut, and so this would be something that you would be adding and protecting habitat. All of Connecticut abuts the Long Island Sound, a nationally protected estuary. There is a EPA program to monitor, manage the estuary, provides funding for projects like these potentially. So there is some coordination concerns that will have to happen with this policy. In the century, there you might be approximately 1 meter of sea level rise, and this is a really emerging concern about the living shoreline technique, is that we ensure that it will adapt to that sea level rise. In Connecticut, in 2012, there was an amendment to the Coastal Management Act, and this basically prioritizes living shorelines over other forms of coastal protection. The only other state to do so is Maryland, so it's really kind of a, I guess, advanced sort of policy. And they chiefly want non-structural, but they will allow, to use these sort of design elements that we showed earlier of tow cells, reefs, breakwaters, if it's going to enhance and protect tidal wetlands. In addition, the permitting is all designated through the Connecticut Department of Energy and Environmental Protection, and all of the actual property rights of below the mean high sea level, waterward is public trust. So I don't think that there's much infringement that happens of one entity stepping on another entity's toes. Now, why Connecticut's living shoreline policy needs an adaptive management plan? Citing the citation for RAE is Restore America's Estuaries, and CIRCA is Connecticut Institute for Resilience and Climate Adaptation, which was also established by the same public act that prioritizes living shorelines. This is a developing field. There's frequent innovations, updates on design guidance and permitting guidance. And so there needs to be constant review and updates as innovations occur. Since we're prioritizing these projects, we need to ensure that they have good longevity. As I mentioned, there's a meter of sea level rise projected for Connecticut's shores, and the wetland habitat will need to be able to adjust. We need to monitor to make sure that the living shorelines are growing in sediment so that they maintain a good level with sea level rise and they don't become flooded and lose their value. Well, they would turn into mud flats, but it would not be the same. It also wouldn't provide the protection benefits, and that's a key concern. You also need to monitor to ensure that there's not invasive species. Common reed is, very prevalent throughout the state in invading salt marshes, especially when they don't have good hydrological connection to the tidal inundations. And we also need to have a monitoring plan to report on successes and failures and incorporate these into design guidance and permitting requirements, so that way we can continue producing the most high quality kind of projects that we can. And in conclusion, here are the references for which I have based this presentation on. I would look forward to my part 2, part 3, and then also we will put together this as a final paper, and this will be a paper, it'll be edited, it'll be nice. So chief among these, I know that Bilkovic and Gitman are throughout the literature, and I will refer to them frequently. Thank you for listening, and how do you end one of these? I don't know. I'll take your questions.